Army units continue to clear the homeland of mercenary terrorists. Syria affirms national dialogue is the only way out of the crisis, and Lavrov asserts the need to implement the Geneva Agreement on Syria. The longest-held Syrian prisoner in Israeli jail, Sidq al-Maqt, is set free after 27 years. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our news for today. Our armed forces continue to chase terrorist groups who have spread panic among citizens in a number of Aleppo neighborhoods. In Bustan al-Basha, army units intercepted and killed large numbers of terrorists who had set up barricades in the area, and in Al-Sina'a school in Sulayman al-Halabi neighborhood. The authorities have clashed with an armed terrorist group in Taqsis village in Hama suburbs. They captured a number of terrorists and killed others. In Idlib, the inhabitants of Harim have started to return to their homes with the help of the authorities and the border guards who had repelled the armed terrorist groups, imposed security and foiled the terrorist scheme of deporting citizens and taking control of the city. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has affirmed Moscow's commitment to the Geneva Agreement on the situation in Syria, as it represents the only way out of the crisis. During his meeting with the Syrian government delegation headed by the Deputy Prime Minister for Economic Affairs, Dr. Qadri Jamil, Lavrov said Moscow was very interested in listening to the Syrian government's assessment of what is happening now and its plans for the future. He asserted the need for a political dialogue as soon as possible so that the Syrians would determine their own future without any intervention. Lavrov added that whether in terms of economy or humanitarian situation, it is necessary to implement the agreements reached and approved by the Syrian government on the 30th of last June to stop the violence and conduct dialogue with the opposition. For his part, Dr. Jamil affirmed that foreign intervention constituted the main problem in setting the crisis through peaceful means. He added that the Syrian government was trying to find a way out of the present situation and working for national reconciliation. The Syrian government delegation has affirmed that the present Syrian government has set on its agenda the goal of achieving national reconciliation, which requires starting a comprehensive political process. In a joint press conference with Minister of State for National Reconciliation Affairs, Dr. Ali Haidar, in Moscow yesterday, Jamil pointed out that the Syrian government delegation discussed in detail during its meeting with the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov the prospects of a solution to the crisis in Syria. He referred to the bloodshed it causes and the pressure it puts on Syrian economy, thus negatively affecting the livelihood of Syrian citizens. Jamil added that the Syrian government's stand has been clear since the beginning of the crisis, namely to resort to dialogue without preconditions. He said setting preconditions for starting dialogue constitutes an obstacle on the way of starting such a dialogue. Jamil talked about the principles of dialogue to be observed in order to start such dialogue, namely rejection of foreign intervention and rejection of violence in all its forms. If these two principles are agreed upon, then the other issues can be solved through a dialogue that aims at reaching reconciliation. Members of the Syrian community in Jordan organized a solidarity gathering in front of the Syrian embassy in Amman, expressing their full confidence in the capabilities of the Syrian Army in protecting Syria and its people against the terrorism targeting it. The participants greeted the steadfastness of the Syrian people inside the country, who proved to the whole world their ability to defend their homeland against any aggression. The longest-held Syrian prisoner, Sidq al-Maqt, was released from Israeli jails and returned to occupied Golan after 27 years he spent inside Israeli prisons on charges of resisting occupation.
After 27 years of imprisonment on charges of resisting the Israeli occupation and embracing commitment to the homeland Syria, the longest-held prisoner, Sidq al-Maqt, has been released to embrace freedom and go back to the occupied Golan and protecting the country's national cohesion. Al-Maqt was arrested on August 23, 1985, and he was sentenced to 27 years in jail on charges of resisting the occupation. He moved to several jails throughout the period of his imprisonment. The released prisoner is from the Majd al-Shams town in the occupied Syrian Golan. He was born on April 17, 1967, and he was brought up by a patriotic family known for its heroic struggle against the Israeli occupation in the Golan.
Finally, clashes erupted before noon today in the Lebanese city of Tripoli between At-Tabbana area and Jabal Mahsen after a fragile calm. The Lebanese National Agency reported that gunfire shots could be heard in different areas and neighborhoods in the city. Yesterday, at least 6 people were killed and more than 70 others injured during clashes between the two sides. With this, we conclude our news bulletin for today. For more information about Syria and the region, you can visit our website in English, syriaonline.sy. Up next, the latest business and market news with Khalid after the break.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. The director of the Agricultural Support Fund in Al Suwaida, Muhammad Abu Mahmoud, has affirmed that the money that has been distributed to the olives, apples, chickpeas, and lentil farmers since the launch of the fund amounted to more than 470 million Syrian pounds, benefiting about 47,000 farmers in the Suwaida province. Russia has officially joined the World Trade Organization, the measure making Russia the 156th World Trade Organization member became a law after the State Douma approved it. Under the agreement, Russia would reduce the average import tariffs to 7% from 10% and open investment in sectors such as telecommunications. The Russian Ministry of Economic Development confirmed that this step will give Russia many benefits. According to the new data from the Economic Growth and Cooperation Organization, the economic sector will get an estimated additional $900 billion due to the simplified custom procedures within the framework of the World Trade terms. Oil traded near its 3-month highest price in New York as the risk of the global supplies countered the concerns that the economic slowdown will curtail the fuel consumption. The U.S. stocks fell as Japan posted a wider-than-expected deficit and the investors awaited the minutes of the Federal Reserve's meeting. The European stocks slid, pairing yesterday's gains as the investors awaited the outcome of the meetings between the leaders of the euro area countries. The Japanese stocks also declined after the nation reported a wider-than-expected trade deficit during July as the European debt crisis lowered the demand. Gold is steady today, near a 3-month high after going up during the previous session, as the investors still see that the European Central Bank is going to take action to contain the region's debt crisis. Platinum hit a highest level since May on worries about the supply disruption at the world's third platinum producer. The euro rose against the dollar and the yen to a 6-week high before the regional leaders meeting this week to discuss Greece's fiscal adjustment program and optimism that the European debt crisis is being contained. With this, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of our news bulletin for today. Thank you for joining us.